Oops. Hi, Karen.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. It's good to see you. I'm glad we're hopping on the podcast again.
I know, again.
Fantastic. And I love that we had a little chat before and we have a little bit of a specific topic to talk about. So thank you so much for brainstorming with me. We've got a lot of different areas we can go in, and this will be
Yeah.
I think a useful one for my audience. So
Yeah, good.
cool.
I'll let you kind of guide it in that way in terms of kicking things off. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I thought if you're ready, we can just sort of dive into the
Sure.
conversation. Yeah. I did a little prep work before, and even though we've collaborated on the show in the past, I thought a good place to start to sort of catch everybody up is for you to share a little bit about who you are and what you do, who you help, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Joanna Sapir. I am a business strategist for wellness practitioners. So I have lots of yoga teachers, but also acupuncturists, body workers, physical therapists, etc., mental health therapists, all kinds of folks. And I came into this work because I myself had been somebody who had started a wellness focused business. It was a strength and conditioning gym. I started that business with absolutely no experience in business whatsoever. Just like the vast majority of us, I got into business because it had been something that had changed my life and I wanted to provide it for others, right? In my case, I moved to a new county and there just was no place to do the kind of athletic training that I had done where I had previously lived. And it had been so important to my life and actually my healing that I was like, this is needed here. I need a place, first of all, but this is needed. Like this can change people's lives. So I went and opened up this gym basically and had no idea what I was doing. And very quickly realized that I had no idea what I was doing. In my case, I had clients. I mean, people were coming, people were coming. And I just found myself in burnout really, really fast. I was a single mom of two young kids. Like, I had no time to myself whatsoever. All of my money was going to childcare so I could run my business. And I realized, oh, I have to learn how to do this. Obviously, there's a way. There are people who run businesses and have figured it out. So obviously, there's a way. And I just set about like learning, like, okay, I got to learn the business side of business here. This can't just be about providing the service. And of course, in the meanwhile, I'm also trying to get better and better at providing the service and getting better and better results for people. But one of the things I discovered was that business systems and business processes and learning how to run your business goes hand in hand with how well you serve your clients.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that a lot of people forget. And I will say, especially in yoga, like, we think of like our service as a gift and an act of service. And we think that business is like separate and like, oh, once money gets into it, it just becomes this like, I don't know, capitalist, dirty, for-profit affair. And the fact is that how you run your business, and like I said, business systems actually contribute to you providing even more powerful results for your clients and working even more deeply with them. They really all go together and go hand in hand. So, long story short, I ended up figuring out business and learning how to build that gym to be really systematized and profitable and sustainable, to run sustainably, which meant that it could run without me, and decided to sell it around 2017. And at that point, I had already started coaching others. Like people started coming to me and asking me, how do you do that? How'd you build your business? Different practitioners I was working with were asking me. And so I was doing that on the side. And then I was like, why don't I do this full time? And I had been a high school teacher for 10 years before I ever opened the gym. So really, I feel like the work that I do now as a strategist, I most of all consider myself a teacher. And, I create curriculum for practitioners and so on. And so to me, this is a marriage of like who I am as a teacher with the experience I have in business.
I love that. And I love how the universe just conspired to kind of bring these opportunities to you. It's such a perfect blend of you had this inspiration and you put it into practice without really knowing how it was going to be received. And it sounded like the community just really connected with what you were offering. I know sometimes for yoga teachers in particular, even if it's something on a smaller scale where they're starting a new class in a particular studio, and they'll write to me. I had somebody write to me this week, oh, I'm really bummed about my class numbers. And many times they translate quote unquote low class numbers to be a reflection of them personally. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was speaking with one of my client groups recently, also about this, that in the gym business, it also is like the number of members you have. Like, it's sort of like, I was going to say like penis size or something, right? It's like this number that's just this ego number and actually doesn't mean anything. And so it's this number that you think is this measure of how good or how successful you are. And it's not, unless you choose, unless to you, that's the measure. But I will say for people in business, usually a more important measure is like their income level or their impact. And really, so a question I was asked the other day in a different interview I did was, what is your definition of success? And and I talked about how I believe anyone's definitions of success needs to be defined by them. And success in business needs to be defined by you. So, to your new yoga teachers, why is it that you want to be teaching yoga? Right? Why is it that you want to be a yoga teacher? And if you have your own business, why is it that you want your own business? And your why and your mark of success is not to have, classes that are full of people. Like there's something more to it. And so it's about impact in some way or making a living doing this, something, right, is in there. And I would say like look at it and kind of rank it in terms of what is most important to you right now. If you're teaching a few classes a week and it's sort of this side thing, and you either don't have a job and don't need to work, or you have some other job and you're doing this out of your passion, right? Then what's important to you there? Again, it's probably something around impact and really helping individuals like find themselves or heal or connect with spirit or whatever it is, right? Rehab their body, whatever that is. And that's still not going to be about numbers. That's going to be about like the depth of impact. And I would say focus on that. And then I just want to kind of note that when it comes to numbers and financially, one of the things I help practitioners do, and I'm just going to plant this as a seed for folks, is that well, yoga is a great example, and just kind of group stuff like this. The model in yoga most common is yoga classes. You teach in another studio. You're actually getting paid very, very little, right? And the people are paying, the students are paying very, very little. And we can talk all about this, Karen. We've talked about this before in the past. What I teach a different model, but the seed I want to plant right now is that you can make more money if income is something that's important to you with fewer clients. There are plenty of ways and models to do that. And that's part of what I like to kind of open people's eyes to. And so one of the reasons people think like, oh, crowded classes, first, there's the Instagram bit. Do you know what I mean? Like the popularity, the influencer style, like it's so popular. But I think that that comes from because people are paying like 10, 15, 20 bucks a class or whatever, and you're barely getting a portion of that. And so you want more people to make a higher income. And what I'm trying to say is, guess what? You can actually make quite a higher income in different ways rather than packed classes.
Mm.
So numbers, you examine that. What's the real thing? What am I really going for here?
Mhm.
Is it the kind of impact I want to have on people? Then that's depth. That's not about lots of people, right? Is it about income? You can still make a higher income with fewer people. Just want to
Yeah.
note.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction. The thing that that reminds me of to focus on impact, and you can focus on impact and still have monetary goals and be looking
Absolutely.
at the numbers too, right? But I wanted to just focus on that impact piece because along with those teachers that oftentimes say to me, I'm not getting the class numbers that I think I should be getting, they're also really nervous about teaching, and they've sort of lost their connection to their why. And they're very wrapped up in not feeling confident, not feeling expert enough. And for quite a few, it turns into this sort of dread before they have to go teach their class, this feeling of panic and nervousness and pressure. And when they're in that mode, they've forgotten all of why they're doing it. It's not as if it's like a job where you sort of have to manage that kind of pressure if the job is paying your bills, your bills, right? This is for many teachers that I talk to a side endeavor to feed that part of them that initially went to teacher training because they love yoga, wanted to share it with other people, and now they find they're teaching and they're feeling all these nerves, and now it's turned into this pressure filled experience. And I love that you said go back to what you want your impact to be and factor that in to what's happening when you teach your classes.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, sure. You want to say anything more
Yeah,
about?
I just wanted to stop in case it sparked anything for you. That's what you said sparked for me. So
Yeah, it
yeah,
does. It makes me wonder, like, if you could tell me more about what the nervousness is about. Like, does the nervousness come out because are people going to come back? Am I like, what is the nervousness
yeah.
about?
So what I have found, I mean, since the last time actually we collaborated, I've had this sort of recurring experience with teachers who enroll in my program. And it's interesting because sort of from a scientific perspective, I've been able to look across a whole number of people who have enrolled and seen these common threads.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found, which is kind of fascinating, is that there's something about, and you'd be a good person to talk to about this because you work with different wellness professionals. There's something kind of baked into teaching yoga that seems to trigger insecurities and feelings of I'm not good enough in I'm going to say women because most of the people I actually haven't had a male client in a long time. So let's just say women. And many, if not most of the women I work with are in their 40s and 50s, and they're in a part of their life where they're either winding up their job and thinking of teaching yoga a lot more, or they're still kind of in that mode where their kids are getting older and they're juggling sort of life priorities and they want yoga to be more of their life. And yet the walking in the room brings up these feelings of, I'm not good enough to be here. And it seems to be tied to a lot of what we hear about what teaching yoga should look like. The focusing on philosophy, and maybe the person thinking, well, that's so complicated. I don't really understand that. The focus on anatomy. Well, anatomy was hard for me to learn. The going to other people's classes and feeling like, well, they're doing ABC. How come I'm not doing ABC? The watching Instagram. A lot of the teachers I talk to, they're following a lot of people on Instagram. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I started teaching over 20 years ago, we didn't have Instagram. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any of that comparisonitis because we had no facility to do that. All I had was if I went to somebody else's class, maybe that was my only comparison to somebody else. So what that all boils down to is teachers having this experience teaching that's a mismatch for what they thought it would be. And it overtakes their desire, their vision, their passion that initiated them going to teacher training in the first place and starting teaching. And so that's my observation and my experience. I do quite a bit of mindset work in addition to the technique and the
Yeah, good.
academy education, because it's just such a big part of it. And that's not typically covered in teacher training, the sort of
Yeah.
nonsense stuff.
Yeah. I'd love to address this. I just took a bunch of notes, but
Yeah.
one more question. What do you think? what do you think they do envision when they decide to take teacher training and envision like the possibility of teaching yoga? What is it that you think they do, or they
Yeah.
tell you? What do they tell you, or what do you
Well, it's
remember?
interesting that you say that because whenever I have a phone call with somebody, I always ask them, what is your vision? Because oftentimes the call will start out with the problems. Here are the problems I'm having. And I'm always looking to bring them back to what do you want? What did you want? What was, like you say? And, the sort of, I don't want to say the standard answer, but sort of the common refrain is, I really enjoy yoga. When I found yoga, it was really impactful to me for fill in the blank reason. I had an injury, I had lost a child, I was going through a divorce, whatever the catalyst was. And I wanted to share that with other people. And that's really, kind of the common thread that links a lot of these people. And so the vision, and this is where the vision sort of changes. There are, most of the people that I speak with, and we can also talk a little bit more about this in follow up to what I'm going to say, are not necessarily thinking I want to teach as a primary source of income. So I don't often get a lot of people saying my vision is to open a studio or my vision is to leave my corporate job or my regular job. Although lately with women who are a little bit older, I am hearing more of that. I'm shifting the priorities in my life because I can, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
shift it up, retiring or whatever. The rest of the folks are looking to teach on the side and really have an active teaching schedule that might even look like non-studio settings and studio settings.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have people that I talk to that work with me in my program that teach in recovery centers or nursing homes. There's quite a few people these days that teach seniors, which I feel kind of funny because I just turned 60 last year. So, seniors doesn't even need to be 80, right? It could be 60, it could be, whatever. But so I love when I hear that people already teaching in non-studio settings or looking to do that as part of their vision. So that's the sort of thing that I hear when
Mm-hmm.
I ask people, what's your vision? And then things along the lines of, I want to feel confident. I want to really know when I look out at the class how to help people that might be having trouble or might be out of alignment in the different postures type of thing.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I've got four things that I'm gonna that I want to say, and then I also want to hear what you think of all this. The first one is it's so interesting to hear, like you're saying, most of the people you talk to are in their 40s and 50s, because as I turned 50 last year. Is that
Mhm.
right? Yes, I turned 51 in a couple months. I have found, I mean, since turning 40 and now since turning 50, I find like the kind of confidence and sort of, empowerment way amped up the older I get, right? So it's interesting to hear the lack of confidence in that age. And so what that highlights for me is just transitions are disruptive. Transitions are ungrounding, right? And transitions are hard, especially if we have had careers and success in other areas of our life. And then this is like starting over brand new in a way. So for anybody who's listening, going through that kind of transition, I just want to say I think that's completely normal. And one of the things I point out to folks, because I have people who are starting new careers in some kind of, health and wellness field, and I just point out to them like that, whatever, those are assets. The whole previous part of your life, like even if you were in corporate or whatever, that is an asset. Believe me, like all the experience you have in something that seems to have nothing to do with yoga absolutely can be transferred over. Even if it's just your connections, it's how you talk to people, all kinds of things. Like, so I just want to say transitions, understandable that that's like, what can make you feel wobbly, totally normal. And you know, you're more powerful as a 40 or 50-year-old woman than anybody younger, that's for sure. And I think that brings me the second thing I want to talk about is, in my head, it's that IG life, that Instagram life. And like you, I sure didn't grow up with any of that. And here's the thing. I mean, anybody who knows my work or has followed me or anything like that knows I frequently, first of all, I don't do Instagram. I mean, yes, there's an account there and my team put some stuff up. Like, I'm not active on Instagram. It's just not a place that I am. And so I actually haven't even been part of that life in that world. And I work with practitioners, both who are on Instagram and who are not. I work with practitioners who make multiple six figures who are not on Instagram and who are. I totally do not believe that you need to be on social to grow a successful and profitable and sustainable business. I I have plenty of examples that show that. And so I just want to note, like, there are people who I know, as I just said, there are people who I know who do really well in business and are not on social media. And when our worlds are wrapped up in social media, we think that's how it is. Oh, the other example is this has happened multiple times. I've been in this business for 8 years. Over these 8 years, I have multiple times people come to me with big social media followings and like that IG life going on. Like it looks so perfect, who are like not making money at all. And that's what they come to me for. Is like, I'm not getting any clients. I don't know how to do this. And I can never like say who they are, but I wish I could show people like, look, it is just a facade. And so just to be really, really clear, that like that it is just a facade. It really is. Like that does not say the impact that people are having. That does not show, how much money they're making, the impact they're having, how spiritually connected they feel, how happy they are with their lives. Like it really is this whole new generation of stuff, and we think that that's how it's supposed to be, and I just want to say it doesn't. And I'm an example of that. I'll say that. Like my business does, I'm very happy in my life, my business does very well, and I'm not doing all that. So just beware that that's not reality, really. And to be clear, you love Instagram, fine, have fun on Instagram. But like that's there isn't coherence a lot of times between what you see there and what's going on. The third thing I want to say is maybe the most well, the third and fourth, maybe the most kind of like important things here. The third one is, and this is an interesting one because yoga, like fitness, I opened a gym and there's like group fitness and there's one-on-one. Yoga is like in the US anyway, or, in the West, or maybe all over, is very much kind of the standard is that it's a group class kind of thing. And it's interesting because I really do believe, like, I don't make this a hard and firm rule, but I do believe that when it comes to, I mean, especially as somebody who taught movement, that we should get a lot of practice with individuals one on one before we expect ourselves to be able to teach groups of people. Um, I will regularly kind of use my fitness training background with my clients when I'm teaching a group, and I'll say, look, I guess I don't need to bring it to what I do now, but different people have different bodies, different issues with their bodies. They need different cues. And you need to be able to learn how, somebody with lordosis does this and the right cue, like learn what the right cues are for them. For me, it's like squatting, like let's try to lean back a little bit more into the heels and let's put the chest up or whatever. And that's going to be the wrong cue for somebody else. And you learn that one on one with individual bodies, right? And if you are going straight into teaching classes, which I understand is just super common, you're giving general cues for everybody. And they're just not going to be appropriate cues for everyone. Do you know what I mean? Because there's different stuff going on. And so I just want to note that, like, but if your option is just to teach group classes, like, be aware of that, but get some one-on-one experience. I really think that that is for anybody that's listening, for example, that hasn't started teaching yet. I would say get one-on-one experience first, and that might start with your sister, your mom, your uncle, your cousin, whatever, right? And working with individual bodies before you get into that group setting, where in the group setting, you can walk around and give individual cues. You this, you this, you this. Or you can even say, as a group, most of you are doing this. Or if you feel this, I want to encourage you to do this. And if you don't, da da da, or whatever. Like you said something, Karen, about to be able to see something in a group. It's like that is a high level skill that you need to know. You need to know individual bodies and how they work and what works with different people. I mean, even learning the right cues for maybe even different ages and so on. And that's all going to come out of working one on one with people. So I do think there's a fault in the system in that way. And like I said, it's the same in fitness, yoga. I get a lot of people who like coach types, who are doing coaching, like, mental health kind of stuff and transformational work. And they have a vision of doing, having these group programs. And that vision is lovely and is usually based on, that's what they see other people doing. And that's what it seems like they can, make the most money or whatever, have the most successful kind of business. And I will tell them every time, like, you don't get to start coaching groups until you've worked with individuals. And you need that experience with individuals before, a group atmosphere can be so, so wonderful and can help everyone. But for you as the practitioner and your coaching skills, like you need to know how to work with people one on one before that. So if you have a choice, I really think getting one on one. And for anybody with the confidence issue, if it's like a struggle in the class, go seek out some one-on-one clients, right? Or free if you're just getting started, like offer one-on-one free services so you're just working with one person, Again, that can be your friends, people around you, like practicing that way. And that leads me to the fourth thing, which is, you know, and I think I've talked about this with you before. A hallmark of what I do with practitioners, and like people only work with me if they want to do this, is I teach people to stop selling sessions or classes or packs of classes and to start creating containers. And so by container, I mean it's like a journey of some sort. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so in the yoga world, somebody might think of this as a session, right? Or a class that's focused on a particular theme and it's 6 weeks long or 8 weeks long or whatever it is, right? It's really different than the drop-in model. So again, I'm taking issue with kind of what has become standard in the world of yoga, which I actually don't think is good for the client. And so I talk a lot about this. I really but I want to bring it back to this confidence issue, which is that when you're in this, and I also want to acknowledge that folks who are listening to this, who are teaching at a studio, like they don't have the control over this necessarily. So it's the system you're in. I want to acknowledge that this is not like shame, blame, or judgment that it's your fault or something. But I do want people to start thinking like, well, how could I do this differently then? That system of just like drop in classes, it's like it creates the idea of, oh, I just drop in and it's just this experience for like this 1 hour. And maybe it's really good and maybe it's okay and maybe it's not. Maybe I don't show up the next week or the next week, but it's just about showing up. And so again, I ran a gym and we had, when I first started the gym for the first 5 years or so, it was really group fitness focused. It evolved in the end. And I did not offer, like people would say, can I drop in and try it? And I did not allow that. And I can talk about business wise how I did get convert clients without that. But the reason I didn't was because I knew, and it's the same with yoga, somebody's health and wellness and fitness goals are not about a good workout. That's not what it takes. And it is going against like kind of common stuff or what you see again back to like on Instagram where people think like a good workout is one where you're like lying in a heap sweating at the end on the floor, right? And it's like, no, like a good workout is part of a program that takes you from where you are now to where you want to be. And it progresses you there, right? Step by step by step, it progresses you there. And so having people like drop in to try a class makes it seem like, well, did you like what we did in the class today? And that's just not, that's irrelevant to them meeting their actual goals. their health goals or their wellness goals. And so I believe the same in terms of how you offer your services. And again, this is a hallmark of what I teach. It goes against the system of standard studios. Who I end up working with is primarily the studio owners, and I teach them how to build a more programmatic based offer so that people aren't coming for drop-in classes or buying a pack of classes where they're coming sporadically, right? And they're not like on a path of progression to where they want to be. And so just want to acknowledge for anybody who's kind of stuck in that system and doesn't have the freedom to move outside of it at this point, that can contribute to feelings of lack of confidence. And I'll tell you why. It's because if people are dropping in randomly, there might be that one person who comes every week, but most people are kind of in and out and in and out. They're not seeing results necessarily because it's just this sort of sporadic thing, right? And because this is not built as a program for you to support them, it's just for you to see them that 1 hour and that's it. And that makes us as practitioners feel like we're not very good because we're not having that much of an impact. But that is actually the system. That's that system, which is why I talk so much about changing that system. And so for anybody who is teaching that, and a really great way to start experimenting is, for example, to seek a one-on-one client or offer one-on-one services and build somebody a program, right? And so you build them a program by I'll get right into it and just say offering them a free consultation where you talk to them, you actually learn from them. What are your goals? What's going on with your body, with your mental health, whatever it is, what's going on in your life? What are your goals? How do you want to feel? How do you want to be able to move in your body? Again, whatever is the realm that you teach in, right? And then you lay out a path for them. And so that might be like, I think, 3 months of us working together one-on-one where you come in once a week. Maybe it's twice a week, maybe it's 3 times a week. And another thing of this, what has become this standard in yoga and fitness of all sorts, all kinds, is 1 hour classes. Well, like that's pretty darn arbitrary. I mean, it's interesting because I do my own yoga class, my own yoga practice. And where I live right now, there's a place across the street, right across the street from me has yoga classes. And I always think like, I should go over there and check that out. And I don't, I mean, I have before, but I don't because it's like they're an hour long or maybe they're an hour and 15. And it's like my own practice is like 15 to 20 minutes. Right. And I mean, I do other stuff. I'm a weightlifter, all this stuff. Right. But it's just like, that's what fits my needs and my goals. I mean, I'm being my own teacher with my own programming. But my point is that like, that may be your client as well. It may be like 3 20-minute sessions every week is the right thing. But we get into these systems, right? Of like, oh, it's an hour. That's what it's supposed to be. It doesn't have to be that way. What is the program that you would design for somebody to help them reach their goals? And this is where you get to really, really experience impact when somebody's committed to that plan, that program, and you're designing it, right, to help exactly them. And that's where you get to see that real impact. And that's just absent from the, studio hour-long class, drop-in class model.
Right. Yeah, and I love that you brought this up sort of conceptually, because I think it really gives the yoga teacher listener maybe a view into the industry that they didn't have before hearing you. And it, me hearing you say it, it sort of gives me pause to realize the system and how it's set up and how that does sort of contribute to a lot of the feelings of lack of confidence that teachers have.
Yes,
I
it
can
does.
remember when you were talking, it reminded me of, I remember years ago when Groupon was really popular, and we had a lot of students that would buy Groupon deals for yoga classes at a particular studio I taught at. And this one woman came in, and it turned out her Groupon coupon had expired. And when she found out, she literally just left. Like she had gotten all the energy up to come take yoga, but when she was at the front desk and she realized her coupon had expired, that was it for her. She didn't want to spend her own money. She would rather go home, not take any yoga. And I think that's just an illustration of what you talked about. And I really wanted to emphasize this to hopefully give yoga teachers that are listening some moments to pause and realize that whole model is really very much designed for, oh, I liked that class. I liked that teacher. Not really oftentimes focused on, it's very transactional, right? It's not really focused
Totally.
transformational. I really felt better in my body. I had a goal around heart rate or muscular strength or whatever it is, balancing better, calming my frantic mind. And that was so it's just interesting. It sort of relates to when we were talking about why are people teaching yoga in the first place, going back to that vision that the teacher has. Well, what about the vision that the student has? But oftentimes, the way the system's designed, it's just checking a box on my list. Today I go to yoga, I go to the grocery store, I go pick up the kids. And that model doesn't oftentimes, kind of put the teacher in a position where they're really looked upon as an impact driver.
Totally, totally. It's why I encourage a consultation, you know. So, I mean, as far as changing the system, this is for anybody who does want to go out on their own, right? And one thing I want to note for anybody who has thought about that, thought about like doing it on their own, or maybe some people are doing some one-on-one here and there, but their primary thing is teaching classes in a studio. I work with plenty of folks where teaching classes in the studio is their lead generation. Like that's how they meet people, and they are allowed to invite those people to consultations to work with them, you know, privately or in other ways or on retreats or whatever it is, you know. There's all different ways you can do this, you know. There can be week-long intensives or whatever, you know. That's all up to you to figure out how you want to serve your folks, but you get the control over that. You get to make the system work better for the clients and for you when you are working outside of like in your own as your own, you know, sole proprietor or business.
Yeah.
And the piece of that part about the client part is really always starting with a consultation. So that I should note when people, you know, would call the gym and say, "Oh, do you have a, you know, trial class I can do?" And we'd say, "Actually, we would get them before we have it's a process I teach now, but we'd get them before they would even say that." And our offer was, you know, a free fitness consultation. And so we would pre-screen them for that. And then we'd sit down and talk to them in depth about their goals, what, you know, what they've done in the past, everything, and lay out what that plan looks like. And that's how you get folks in is by listening to them and showing them that you have a plan of action for them to reach their goals, you know.
Got it. Um, all right. I definitely want to go a little more in depth about, we started to touch on what it would look like to work with people one-on-one. So I want to definitely go into that a little bit more to give people an idea of what does that really look like, especially because most of the people that I'm talking to are working in group, doing group classes. They're not doing privates. And it's not to say that they might not want to. It's just that kind of like what you had mentioned, the sort of regular model or most common model is, I complete my teacher training. Maybe I teach at the studio where I took training, or maybe I peruse my area and reach out to different studios in the area. The thing though, and this might be putting the cart before the horse, but let's just put it out there. The piece that I also hear a lot is the money piece. And not necessarily, I don't think I should be charging. And a lot of what we talked about at the beginning, that sort of yoga shouldn't be about making money, that narrative, which is still out there. But the other part about the piece that I often hear, and this isn't just for new yoga teachers, it could even come up with a teacher with more experience, but that mindset that I'm not qualified enough to actually maybe charge people or charge people X amount. This feeling like, and it usually, I just had a conversation the other day, it usually comes wrapped in this sort of not talking down about yourself, but saying, oh, well, at some point in the future, I'll charge for the class, or oh, I'm teaching in XYZ location, and right now it's just free, but I do have plans on charging them, or right now I'm teaching and I'm charging them $15 a class, but, or I'm teaching this private situation and I'm just charging $25. I really want to charge 100, but I'm just not ready yet. So there's sort of this inner battle over value and worth. So I'd love to know what you think about that, and maybe this comes up with clients that you work with.
Yeah, it does for everyone. Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of different answers, and none of it's going to be like nicely wrapped with a bow, you know? I think probably the number one like problem here is that people seem to equate their worthiness or like, am I worth this? I mean, I can't stand the phrase like charge what you're worth. You know, it's like, oh my goodness, this is not about me. Like, money is not like an expression of my value. My goodness. Talk about like internalizing capitalism. Like, capitalism's just a man-made construct that we happen to live in right now, you know? I mean, that is just not the truth.
Yeah.
I see money as, you know, money is necessary for survival in a capitalist system, which we live in, right? It's what I need to pay rent or mortgage and my food and to support my kids and, you know, and so on. And it's like, that's all it is this exchange of services. It is not like of like what you're worth. So just want to kind of tease that out. But that's what's going on is people have really internalized, I would say like full on capitalism when they're thinking, I'm not worth it enough yet. I'm not good enough yet to charge that.
You're saying if I had 5 years of teaching experience, then I would be more experienced and could justify charging people $200 for a private or $150 for a private. But I just started teaching, so I don't have enough experience. I'm not worth that.
Right. I think that that's just an excuse. So, one of the things that I say to folks, so I do a whole pricing thing. This is where I run into this with my clients. So, first of all, I work with people with businesses, you know, already. And so these are people who are trying to make a living, to be clear about that. And you know, it's not a side hustle or just getting going. And so what we do in pricing is actually I use the numbers. I just use the straight numbers. And one let's see, how can I tease this apart? I will say this, we don't get to pricing until we've done so much kind of foundational work on their business that contributes to the fact that once we get to the pricing, they see something really important, which is your business is its own entity. Your business is not you. So again, undoing this thing about your worth. No, a business is for profit, right? This isn't a charity. It's not a 501(c), right? It's a business, and the job of a business is to make profit. Profit is it's the business is supported, all the funds that are required that the business has to pay out are covered, and there's a little extra. Okay. And so I kind of point out, like, not even point out, we have a calculator that we use. And so that even includes the expenses of the business, even includes your pay. So, like, how much does it cost to run your business? What are the bills it has to pay, including your salary, your pay, right? The taxes. If you rent locations or have a location that you rent, how much does that cost? What props and supplies do you need? What software do you use? All of these are business expenses, again, including your pay. And so your business has to bring that amount in to at least cover its bills. And then it's not profitable until it's making more than just covering its bills. Right. And so we separate that out and actually determine pricing based on that. What's the business need to make?
Yeah.
So, but what I wanted to note was that yes, my clients will run into this thing where they turns out they were not charging anywhere near enough. Right. And so we look at their pricing and they're like, oh my God, really? Like what? And so first of all, again, we've done a lot of stuff ahead of time where they fully understand that and can own that. I also teach them, you know, this whole sales process that makes it easy for them to actually start enrolling people at those prices so they feel empowered with tools. But here's what I'll say, that part about people saying, well, I will charge $100, you know, in the future I want to, but I'm doing 25 right now. I give my clients a little leeway and I say, look, so let's say somebody had been charging, I have a good example of somebody who does movement stuff. She's on my website, Darcy. I adore her. She was teaching movement classes for $15 a drop in, like that's what she was doing before she came to me. So she starts working with me and we design this program. Her program is like $3,000 or something for like 3 months. That's a big giant change, right? And so she learned all the tools and so on. But when we first came up with her pricing and figured out what her pricing had to be for her business to be sustainable, she said, oh my goodness. And I said, look, this is what you can do. You get to start your first person, you can enroll at this lower price. And then your second person, it's going to go up to this. And your third person, it's going to go up to this. And your fourth person. And we built like a step ladder. And so in this case, those were one-on-one. And so it was like first person, second person. And I always say you can be transparent about this if you want to or need to. Like if somebody is like, oh, could I do it in 6 months? You can say to them, yes, but I'm actually increasing the price every person for the next 4 people because the real price is this, or somebody who signs up and then they send their friend to you. You say, I need you to know, like these prices go up every time. So it's going to be different for them or whatever. Like you never get to go backwards. So that's one method of, I guess what I want to call out is the person who says, I'm not ready to charge this yet. The call out is great. What is it going to take for you to get to the next level of pricing? What do you need to have in place? And like I said, it's an excuse that they're saying because really it's just like they're going on this feeling. So
Right.
fine, let's make this tangible. What is it like when you have 5 clients? That's when you'll raise the price. When you have taught for 1 year, is that when you're going to raise the
That's what
price?
I think it's more connected to,
You know what I mean?
time.
Well, fine. So make that ladder for yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? This year I'm charging 25. As
Right.
soon as I hit whatever, my anniversary of my teacher training, November 1st, the prices are going to 50. And then the year after that, they're going to, 75 or whatever it is. And usually what happens is people, once they make that first jump, they realize that it worked really well. It was fine. They're doing
No one
better.
decided didn't fall. No one quit.
Exactly. They're doing better. And then they kind of scrap their whole long-term plan and they just kind of go right. They're ready to go right, ready quicker than they thought they were going to be.
Right.
And so that's my kind of like call out or call in or like
Yeah.
advice to anybody is fine, make your ladder.
Yeah.
Make that step by step when I'm going to do this. And then really think about it. Like, what do I need to expand? So if you're at 25 now, whatever it is, and you want to be at 100, how can you expand right now to feel more confident to even get to 50? What can you do right now to get to 50? And the thing is when we do program design, that's something that we do too. It's like I ask people like, what is the service you really want to provide your people? And so like they may start like bringing things in that don't take much more energy from them. Like, oh, I want to have yoga nidra
Yeah.
meditations.
Thinking, yeah.
You record that once and everybody's getting it. Do you know what I mean? You end up with like a library of them. Like, great, you get to send them to, that's not more work on your part. But if that helps you like feel like, yes, this, of course I can charge more. This is really like giving something to them, then do that, like, and make those step ladders. And so if you want to make it like, okay, once I have 10 yoga nidra meditations recorded, I'm going to start charging this. Great. Then do it.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like the real issue is sort of a nervous system regulation issue. And so
Totally.
kind of giving them the stepping stone process or the stepladder process as a way to kind of get their nervous system used to charging more. And once they kind of hit that first or second rung, they are re-regulated and they're just able
Yes.
to move forward. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about, this idea of teaching privates. And I really want to emphasize this, that for anyone listening who's thinking, oh, this doesn't apply to me because I work a 9 to 5 job and I teach 2 classes a week. Like this applies to any yoga teacher. Any yoga teacher has a huge opportunity to take on private clients, even if they're not thinking about their teaching of yoga as a business. Like, yes, your clients are primarily leaning into their wellness business as their primary source of income. Um, by the same token, somebody that has it as a side, I don't even want to say side gig, but just an additional thing that they do that feeds their passion.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, imagine creating a really sustainable side business and having a full-time job that pays for your health insurance and, brings in regular salary. That would be amazing, right?
Mhm.
So you talked a little bit about this idea of developing programs. Let's sort of start at the beginning of the story. And you mentioned a little bit about if you're teaching your group classes and it's okay for you to sort of engage students in that environment to be potentially private clients. Are there other ways, or let's just talk about how yoga teachers can find people for
Yeah.
one?
Yeah. First thing I'd suggest is to shift your mind from like, you're not offering one-on-one yoga. That's just the method.
Yep.
And therefore, what are you offering? And so this goes to like some just classic business stuff, which is who are your ideal clients? And then what are their pains and problems and goals and desires? And how will you help them meet those? And so, really starting with who and thinking about like, who have I worked with in my classes, for example? Who is like my favorite client? Or who's somebody who they don't even have to have been a client in a class? Who's somebody in your life that you see that you're like, oh my goodness, I know I can help them. I know I can help them with what I have. And they don't even necessarily know it yet. And they don't have to be even have ever done yoga or be looking for yoga or anything. That's what I'm trying to say is take like the I'm not take out of the equation I'm offering one-on-one yoga and just instead think of the person. So again, let's just say it's somebody you work with in your regular job, or again, it could be a family member, and you're like, I know that I can help them. Think about who they are. And you could even ask them, like, what's going on with you? Like, you want to know how do they describe their pains, problems, goals, and desires? And whatever realm that is in is the realm you want to be helping with. So if it's purely like physical stuff with their body, then that's what you're trying to get at is what are their physical pains, problems, goals, and desires. If you're wanting to work with people more on a emotional and mental level, you're getting that. If it's all of the above, fine. But like, that can encompass a lot of things. And that's how you invite people to potentially work with you one-on-one. So what you want to do is be offering invitations. That's how to think about it. And the invitation is actually just to talk with you about their pains, problems, goals, and desires. And the way you do that is by saying, I see you, in order to call out to them. So let's just come up with a hypothetical and just say, let's say it is your mom. I mean, I started training my parents when I opened a gym. My parents were in their 70s, I think, at that time. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Oh, my mom told me that she was like, borderline osteoporotic and they were going to put her on medication. And I was like, you got to come in, strength training. Like, I got to get you on this, right? So let's just say it's like that, somebody really close to home. And you're like, I know I can help her. Let's just say it's mom, osteoporosis, right? And so it's like there's this certain age group. So you're identifying like, this is who I want to work with, and it's around like women, bone health, etc., right? You could have a few conversations with people who you know around that and find out what are they thinking. So in the case of my mom, it's like, oh, the idea of being on medication was sort of not, she was not into that idea. And that she was like aging, right? And that like her bones were deteriorating. It was kind of this fear of her own mobility. I should say my parents are super active. They're now in their mid 80s and like still hike and ski and all this stuff. So they're very active people. That's relevant here because that's my who, right? So somebody who's been active their whole life, hitting their 70s, finding out their bone health is starting to deteriorate. Let's fix that so you can continue to hike and ski even as you age, right? And that's the kind of thing. That's the I see you. So it's I see you. And so you're calling out to people, hey, if you are, in aging, and we could make it broader, if you're in your 60s to 80s and you're a woman and you're, have osteopenia or you're, like on osteoporosis medication or found out you might have to be going for that, but you've always been active and you want to continue age with health and you want to strengthen your bones and potentially get off medication and, keep moving and being active as you age, I'd like to invite you to schedule a consultation with me to talk about how you can do that through, and you can say
Yeah,
yoga,
right.
right? But it's not, I'd like to invite you to work with me one on one in yoga.
Right.
Like you got to first say, I see you
Yeah.
and I see your pains and problems, and I have a potential path to your goal and desire. And again, you can name the modality, right? I work with people who do multiple modality, who use multiple modalities, many. So it's like you may have that too. You
Yeah.
know, I can help you strengthen your bones through, and it might be, this, and yoga therapy or whatever, right? And I invite you to talk with me about what that path would look like or what that would look like. So the invitation is to something for free. It's saying,
Yep.
I see you. I see your pains and problems. I have a potential way for you to meet your goals and desires. I invite you to speak with me for free. And then that consultation is where you understand everything that's going on with them and you lay out that path for them and what you think it would be. And for people that are just getting started, your first few people, you are kind of doing sort of a bespoke kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like you're experimenting. This is what I love about working one on one with people is that you're getting that experience of experimenting. And then folks who work with me, we're looking at those patterns from the past and we're like systematizing their program. So we're actually making it one thing that everybody goes through. And of course there's customization within it, but it's one container so that your business systems can just be operating around this one container that you're doing for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about when I go, my boyfriend Ben belongs to a local golf club, and I think about how many times I go there and people engage me in conversation about their back pain or osteoporosis or shoulder, frozen shoulder.
Exactly.
And so many conversations I have about yoga. And so, I just think of sort of an avatar, a type of person, a male version and a female version, a golfer version, a retiree version. So sort of
Exactly.
under similar umbrellas, but these different, kind of avatars under that big umbrella. So, okay, so you have this, and I also love just to reemphasize it that you're really speaking to the transformation, not necessarily the program. So there's more of that high level conversation versus the nuts and bolts of how you're going to get them there, which eventually they'll experience when they enroll. Okay, so the person starts out with that to kind of open the door to a little bit more of what happens then. So they have this free consultation. Is before that free consultation where they've developed a program of sorts or their rates for services so that after that free consultation, they can let the person know if they want to move forward with them, how they do that?
Yeah, you would have that developed ahead of time. But like I said, if you're just starting out, it's like you might want to have some ideas of what that might look like with somebody, but you are going to be literally being like, I don't know, think of it like a doctor is doing an assessment and then telling you what the prescription is. It's like that's what a consultation essentially is. But yes, you're going to want to know your prices and so on. And so like you might just come up with in your head, like there could be a 3 month, 2 times a week, or there could be a 6 month, one time a week, right? Or something like that. Like what are the ways that I think that might help? I will say in this, I teach a whole system to this. So I'll just say like in the system I teach, there's a pre-qualifying process where we filter people before they get to the consultation so that you're not doing consultations with people who are simply not going to be a fit no matter what. And so we do that in a variety of ways, but that includes even a budget question where we're filtering people. And the budget question, goes something like, if during the consultation we decide that this is a good fit for both of us and we'd like to work together, my services run from this to this, is that in your budget? And so that, again, that's an example of a filtering question, and that's a specific one around budget so that's being done ahead of time. So I want to point out that you actually know a bit about people before the whole consultation. So you can have an idea of what's going to be the right fit for them, like what's going to be the right program for them, because
Got
you'll
it.
you'll know a little bit already.
Got it. All right. So I have another question, might be a little too detailed, but let me just throw it out there, just kind of anticipating what people might be thinking. So, right now I'm recording this in my yoga studio in my house. I'm fortunate enough when Ben bought this place, we don't have kids. We had these rooms that children would be in. So I said, I call dibs on this room, and then he put his kids in here, so it's multi-purpose. And now I do a podcast in here. But when I lived in my condo in another part of Boston and I saw people privately, they squeezed in between my desk and, and they didn't care, but I lived in a 400 square foot apartment, and some of my most wonderful memories of seeing people one-on-one are in that little apartment in the Back Bay, like steps from where the Boston Marathon ends. And it was
Mm.
just so wonderful. Now, not everybody has, like, I'm wondering for your clients that you work with that are, maybe yoga teachers, maybe other professionals, are you primarily seeing that people are seeing these private clients in their home or in the client's home? Just how is that happening? Just to,
Oh, that's just so like personal choice and, and so on. Again, people are coming to me already in general with their businesses existing. So
oh,
I
okay.
have people who are doing yoga and one-on-one and group yoga online.
Awesome.
I have one client who, like you did or like you do, has a little studio in her house. Part of her house is converted, and then I have people who have studios and have space, have rent space that they rent for their business.
Yeah.
So I sure don't prescribe that. That's really your choice. When it comes, it's interesting because all through like the pandemic era, everybody went online in the beginning, and then afterwards, a lot of people at one point were coming to me and saying, I think I have to be online. Like, again, sort of back to that IG life. Like they're seeing all these yoga teachers teaching or, selling these yoga things online. My question to them always was, how do you like to work with people? That's to me like we want to be lit up by our work. How do you like to work with people? And some people are like, I love online. It really works for me. And other people are like, I do not like online. I like in person. Great. There's your answer, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, and I can certainly remember times where I had a lot of private clients and I would go to their homes. Sometimes they would come to my house depending on the person, schedule. And the online model certainly gives you an ability to see people who don't live near you. So that's kind of nice if you're marketing your program out, I mean, because if it's in person, there's only so far you can go. But just like you said, it's not always about the numbers. So you could have, you know, 5 clients that live within 10 miles of you, but you're selling programs and it's a program rate and you could have a really nice, income from that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what what have we not covered that you think would sort of tie this up for people?
I really think we talked about a lot. I think we went all over the place. So I don't think there's anything missing here. I mean, if people have more questions, they'll come to you and ask you or come find me.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I love that we talked about this because I really haven't talked about this in depth before. And I feel like this can give people an additional way to share what they love, to get into what they love, not necessarily going into a studio and teaching the way the studio wants them to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, I would say like if you were to ask me what I hope that people most took away, and that is that like you can change the standard systems to teach others and have an impact on others in the way that you want to. And like I really encourage you to like have the impact you want to have. And that means you can break some of the, standard ways things are done. Like think about how do you want to do it? How do you want to serve your people? And go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and you can do it in addition to teaching in the studios. It doesn't have to.
Exactly. Totally.
All right, so let people know how to find you, how to connect with you, anything you want to share to kind of get folks connected with you.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, we have a free gift for anybody who wants it and is listening, and it's 3 of my business systems. So it's really what I do is teach business systems. And so these 3 systems, I'm trying to remember what they are. I'll have to let me click on the button and remember. what we're giving you here.
And this might be a link that I'm going to share in the show notes, I believe.
Yes, you'll share in the show notes. Oh, yeah, it's my lead generation and lead capture system. Oh, the red velvet rope policy, which I just mentioned. I just mentioned to you about how there's a pre-qualifying filter process. And so that's one of the three systems in this free gift that we lay out. And then what I call speak their language. These are really good now that I'm seeing what they are. These are really good. So speak their language is exactly about how to offer those invitations. So when I was saying you don't want to say, hey, come join my one-on-one yoga. Instead, you want to say, I see you. I see what's going on with you. And I want to invite you to like potentially find a path to help you. That's what we have. So I have handouts on all three of those things. You have the link for that.
Yep.
And then for anybody who just wants to learn from me, I'd encourage you to find me on my podcast, which is called The Business Revolution for Practitioners with Joanna Sapir. And then last thing, anybody who's interested in really like what my services are and working with people, I run a program called the Profitable Practitioner Academy, and you can learn all about that on my website, which is joannasapir.com. And it'll also have a programs page and tell you all about that.
All right, great. I was just thinking as you were talking, I can think of a lot of people if I said, do you want to sign up for my yoga program? The first thing they would say is, I can't do yoga. So I think it's so great that you're emphasizing, talk to them in their own language about the transformation they want. And then, hey, by the way, it's going to be yoga that's going to help you get there, but you've hooked them with the transformational conversation. So I think that that is just really important to focus, kind of flip it a little bit.
Yeah,
Uh,
great.
well, thank you so much for being here. This was a lot of fun. I learned a lot and it's inspiring to me too. So I really appreciate your time. And I'm going to end the recording, but just hang on. We'll talk for a couple seconds after.
Okay.